Here's a sloppy summary of Momodora, Reverie Under the Moonlight. Hopefully it's so sloppy you can still enjoy it if you do decide to play it, but I'm gonna go over all the things I thought were interesting, and being a summary, there's obviously gonna be spoilers. Since the game is called Momodora, obviously you play as a priestess named Kaho. That's because it is actually the fourth game in the series. Momo and Dora are actually the main characters of 1, 2, and 3, which I haven't played. But if you went to school, you would know that 4 comes before 1, as it is actually a prequel, so we're all good. As a priestess, Kaho wants to cure the curse that is plaguing the land, and what better way to do that than slapping everything with a leaf? Yes, a maple leaf. I don't know how it works, but maybe it's similar to getting a really bad paper cut. So Kaho heads to the city to meet the queen in hopes she can do something. But first she's got to get through the forest, which, due to the curse, everything cute seems to want to kill you. So to defend yourself, you have your snack crackle pop 3-hit combo, which feels very satisfying, and a bow that you can charge up. You can also roll around to dodge and use a limited number of healing items if you get hurt, similar to Dark Souls like every other game. Normally, I wouldn't like the game because you have to quote-unquote purify some cute creatures, but don't worry, soon you'll be killing your usual creepy monster. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Making your way downtown through the forest, you come across a lovely lady with a very large derriere, and holy but holy does it hit like a dump truck. I was expecting to breeze through the game since it has 3 difficulties and I chose normal, but instead I had the fear of God put into me by the first boss no less. But by using the bravest strategy of spamming arrows, we defeat creepy leg lady, and just to be safe we added a few extra arrows. Afterwards we run to a coughing skeleton where social distance doesn't seem to matter, and arrive at Car City. There we're greeted by a skeleton shopkeeper as well as angry witches throwing magic and shadow puppies. Lots and lots of angry shadow puppies. If this wasn't spooky enough, there's also enemies that will ambush you, especially when you try to open treasure chests. Eventually, you'll run into a little gremlin of an enemy who plans to serve your rotten corpse to his mistress. But unlike the first boss, he's not quite as intimidating, so I just kinda went to town on him. But looks are deceiving, cause he still does a lot of damage. Unfortunately for him, the ground collapses and he falls into the water because his mistress, Lubella the Witch of Decay, shows up. And instinctively, we start smacking what appears to be her biggest weakness. Afterwards, she disappears, so we can expect more fan service later. But if you're feeling dirty after that fight, you can cleanse yourself in the water, which will kill you. Since this game makes you manually save, I had to redo the fight, but it was actually a blessing in disguise. Fighting them the second time, I just happened to not take any damage, which the game actually rewards you. You get a special item every time you beat a boss flawlessly. But since I'm stupid, I didn't realize this until after I beat the game because I just thought I missed it the first time. Soon after, you meet a knight who's not so nice named Kath, who tells you to seek shelter. Only for us to run into an even meaner knight who tries to kill us with a very large sword that Guts would be proud of, but it gives us a chance to use the new boss item. We also stumble across a windmill asking for a green box, which will be very important later, a man who tells us to find an old cat lady, and a nun who scams us of $15. As we explore onward, there are more creepy monsters lying around every corner, but the art style makes them look kinda goofy. And after running through some Indiana Jones level traps, we learn from the cat lady that the queen is the one that's possessed and responsible for the curse. At this point, the game really opens up and becomes a proper Metroidvania where you have to explore and figure out where to go, maybe slide down some super long ladders, maybe beat up some more witches, things that throw grenades at you, or the stuff of nightmares. You might run into this funny little plant duo, a shopkeeper spider, or even the classic chest mimic. Eventually, you'll run into our friend Chatty Cathy in the middle of a fight with a heretical arsonist, and since it seems like she's done some good damage, we can just sit back and provide some support fire. But speaking of fire, she does use a lot of flame pillars as expected of a arsonist, and she can also whip you into shape. And once you beat her, she goes out with a literal bang. Once you're done, Cool Cat Cathy tells you she's also trying to stop the queen. But to get to her, we'll need 4 pieces of a crest, which each one also grants you a special ability. The first one allowing you to mid-air dash. After banging our head on some spikes, dying to some arrows, spikes, and living statues, and finally getting revenge on said statue, We get to enjoy some backtracking by jumping on these jellies and slowly climbing this ladder, or better yet, jumping up the ladder. Upon returning to the cathedral, we run into another lady who's also against the queen. But in typical anime fashion, she assumes we're on the queen's side, and instead of talking and clearing up the misunderstanding, we stay silent and are forced to fight her. It would have been really neat if there was an option to talk your way out, but regardless, this is still a very cool fight. Like you, she also dodges and jumps around, but there is one kind of BS mechanic in that she curses you, so you can't use any items, including healing items. But after a couple of tries, we do beat her, and by beat her, I mean kill her. And then we just kinda had to stand there and feel bad that we killed a potential ally. But the guilt doesn't last long because we got a new upgrade, which lets us shoot a volley of arrows. After being lost, we find a ladder that goes underwater, which is a bunch of bird shenanigans, because we previously learned that water killed us. But now it seems that we can swim just fine. In the sewers, we face a weird worm-like thing, which teleports around and occasionally pecks at you. There's also an enemy that will join the fight every time if you don't kill it before you fight the boss. But worst of all is that it can use Hyper Beam, which pretty much kills you in one shot. After a few good slaps, it does a little shimmy, and we get another crest fragment, which lets us charge arrows faster. We also run into our skeleton friend who's looking for his wife, and once you head to Whiteleaf Memorial Park, you'll find him in front of his wife's grave. Pretty dark. But on the bright side, we get another encounter with Lubella the Witch. Her magic's a lot faster, but still a pretty simple fight. But she doesn't go peacefully, as she has one last trick up her sleeve, which is turning us into a cat, I guess. So evil. But we're still able to use our leaf to break out a steel cage, and conveniently on our way out we find an orb that lets us transform back and forth. Coming back, we see our skelly friend take an eternal nap. We also get very lost looking for the fourth fragment because I didn't expect them to hide it outside the city, but with it we're able to teleport around. And finally we're able to get inside the castle. Inside, we meet an actual crazy cat lady who's very angry, what appears to be the baby birds of the previous boss we killed, some possessed paintings, and also a new spell. It's not really useful in combat as it just summons a light breeze, but if you use it on the windmill we mentioned earlier, we're able to go down and soak our maple leaf in some hibisco tea, which turns it into a fresh spring leaf that can purify the curse. But it also turns our weapon into puke green. And before we meet the queen, we did some backtracking where we met the sister of one of the bosses. She's actually an optional boss, but I didn't find out till after. I also found a neat little trick you can do, which uses this item that restores HP whenever you're poisoned. And if you have poison arrows, you can use them to heal yourself. Definitely save a bunch of healing items. Returning to the castle, we had to fight two bosses at the same time, which is probably karma for ganging up on the arsonist. And like all the other fights, they do hit pretty hard, so it's only fair that we hit harder. We just happen to have an item that boosts our attack at the risk of losing health, in combination with a consumable that also boosts our attack by sacrificing health. We can do some massive damage. The archer foolishly brings a knife to a leaf fight and quickly falls, believing in her queen till her last breath. We soon find our cool friend Kath, who gets a little too cold as she got here first and was gravely injured. She asked us to end her suffering, which I accidentally said no to. So I reloaded my save and did the whole castle section again because that would have been a total jerk move just to leave her dying. So after properly ending her suffering, we send her off with some prayers, and we're left with the Passiflora, which is an item that heals us to full health. Near the top, we run into a flying doppelganger which shoots some shrimp and dies. Finally, we reach the throne room where we find the queen looking pretty evil. With no words, she goes straight for our throats by using the most evil magic of all, which is geometry. But since we went to school, we make quick work of her, but then we find out that was only phase 1 and she pulls out the advanced math, the horrors of trigonometry. Oh, and she can also make erupting geysers and explode. Her final form, I guess, is a bird cage with more exploding triangles. I did manage to beat her with my dying breath, but I guess that doesn't count. But after a few more tries, we do get the fireworks, and she explodes into some nice pink confetti. But because the confetti is poisonous, Kaho decides to absorb all of it into her own body, sacrificing herself to end the curse. And so the game ends on a bit of a somber note. That is, if you got the good ending by making your leaf green. In doing so, she paves the way for future generations of priestess. Overall, a very enjoyable game, and if you like a challenge, there's a lot to do. You can play it on harder difficulties. There's also a new game plus with some enemy changes. It's not a long game either. It took me a little under 4 hours to beat. But I think I'd rather go back and play 1 through 3, especially with the 5th game on the horizon, Momodora Moonlight Farewell. Which, by the way, looks amazing as Reverie Under the Moonlight came out in 2016, so you can see there's been a lot of improvement in the 6+ years. But hey, thanks for watching this video, because today is the 2-year anniversary of the first upload on this channel, which was also about video games. But if you'd like to see more, let me know down in the comments. Subscribing would be awesome, and I hope to see you on the next video. Bye bye.